we need to move to is to concentrate on the delivery of services. And if we concentrate on emphasising how the delivery of services is improved and the experience that users of services find when they use improved services, that becomes a selling point amongst the broader community. And actually, quite interestingly, I sat next to somebody at lunch who just come out of one of the London councils, and he was very, very complimentary about the council he just moved from in the UK. And I think that's really the message that we want to be getting here, that local government and councils and state governments, it's about the delivery of services, and providing those services are improved through private sector delivery, then the message is spread, far and wide.
If we currently look at the biggest impediment to sort of expanding service delivery model, it comes about because of the procurement method. I mean, the method within current contracts is pretty much services stay with the government and or are partially retained, and as a result of sort of the desire not to want to have the shift from public service employment to private service employment. Hence we get the labour service agreements that we're sort of stuck with operating. There has to be a fundamental political shift, I suppose, to enable that to happen. That translates into perhaps opening up the contracting opportunities to provide the service, and that will lead to sort of greater innovation in terms of the whole service delivery model. Without that sort of change in emphasis on what they want to procure, then it's very hard for industry to be putting back offerings that are not palatable. So we need a fundamental mindset change in terms of the sorts of education services and say health services to start that process.
I think we also need a commitment to sustaining that. It's too easy for government to dabble and try, and there are a couple of isolated examples of hospitals around the country where clinical services are actually provided by the private sector, but the private sector got out of it pretty quickly because government stopped doing it, and it became such a marginal exercise to just have one public hospital in your portfolio where you were providing public services. So I think that there does need to be that shift, but then it needs to be committed to and needs to be sustainable. And I think then that the other stakeholders will come along, and the capital providers are another one. And David Roseman mentioned how if we put more services in, we probably will change the capital balance. But I think if we know that that's where the model is going, that education process, not only of government and of the community, but of the capital providers as well, will all manifest itself if there is a genuine commitment and a sustainable commitment to it.
We've heard about the need for political leadership because the lead isn't coming from the community through the research that we've seen today, and that's been a challenge. But it just seems to me, based on the preamble to the question we've just had, change of government in New Zealand has profoundly changed that market from one where there'd be little engagement of the government with the private sector for the delivery of services to quite an expansive engagement. We're currently seeing in this state the consideration of outsourcing of some government services that would not have been considered without a global financial crisis. Perhaps similar things happening in Queensland. Western Australia's got some process of change. So it just occurs to me over the last 6 or so months, there's evidence that there is quite a groundswell of change before us. So I think it just seems to me this discussion is very timely discussion. Do we have any further comments or questions? One at the back.
Mark Reynolds, Bovis Glenlease. There's been everyone's alluded to leadership as one of the sort of barriers that's stopping this happening quickly. Just a comment perhaps from each of the panels as to what do they think the industry could do in the next year to help political leadership change that would encourage greater involvement in the PPP market.
Who wants to lead off?
Perhaps if I start and if we just take the two sectors that we have most involvement in, which is health and education. I think, within the projects that we're involved in, we see that we need to be ploughing back a lot of that information back to the Department of Education at a higher level, try and sort of work with them at a sort of steering group level to look at what positive improvements could be coming out of it. I mean, running lessons learnt sessions, starting to challenge their thinking about it when it's hot with them through the project. That's certainly one aspect of it. With education, with health, I mean, there is certainly huge opportunity in health to work with them in terms of just their whole procurement model and their whole processes of user group consultation and that on the physical delivery or design of buildings, that would greatly assist. That would then open up the opportunities to start to think about how we could explore or expand various service deliveries as well. So it's integration with the right level within those departments to have them understand the benefits and the opportunities for their service model delivery to change.
I think another sort of thing we can do is stop letting government use the sort of GFC as an excuse, and we better go back to how we used to do things, because the private sector is having all these problems due to capital constraints and GFCs. I think the desal is just a great example of nobody knew when that process started out where it was going to finish and the challenges it might face, but just a belief that between government and the private sector, the competition would innovate and create the right solution. I think the evidence has now been borne out with the recent announcement. But there were many doomsayers who were saying, well, why are we even bothering with private capital 6 months ago when the world was melting down? So I think we've got to just accept that competition does foster innovation, and it does foster better services. And if governments trust that and don't sort of retreat because of the GFC, we will see those innovations and those better service delivery outcomes.
Yeah, I just add to that, the GFCs also helped to contribute to a discussion about the role of the private sector in the provision of public infrastructure with the government's package, the stimulus package, and the fact that it has to be spent and spent quickly. And this brings me to my point on leadership, the importance of leadership not only at the political level, which is critical, obviously, but it's also at the bureaucratic level, and having good quality bureaucrats. And we have a handful in New South Wales, and Bob Leese is one of them. I mean, he made a decision when he's put in charge of this process for New South Wales, the contractor manager model for the construction of and management of the spending in public schools of that package. Now, the Department of Commerce wanted to run that process. There's no doubt about that. But Bob had the sufficient leadership. And I think they led all the other states. I'm not sure what the other models are in the other states, but I'm sure they're doing it here. And it's that kind of leadership where we now have a number of private sector agencies involved in the provision of public construction.
For me, the private sector can play a very important role in getting the debate going. I see today's discussion and lunchtime address as an opportunity to start exposing some of the ideas and get a healthy debate in the public arena going. There hasn't been much of a debate about alternative models. There hasn't really been the drivers for change, but as I mentioned a moment or two ago, there's some significant drivers for change. So a full participation in a non-ideological way on what works, how can we contribute, what are the other models, I think would help support our political and bureaucratic leaders with inputs and thoughts that could be very innovative. So I think really what we're doing today is one step along the way of a public engagement in the debate, and hopefully the press will pick up on this and it'll become a more broadly debated issue. Probably got time for one more question.